Okay. Regretfully, Amy Kemp, who is our director of programming at our Amanda's House, which I'm going to talk to you more about. It's a women's recovery home that's under Hope United's umbrella. She came down ill this morning, so she was going to share her testimony with you this morning, and that's a disappointment. But God always has a better plan, so we'll just go with what He has for us this morning. And I'd like to take an opportunity, I don't rarely get to do this, to share my own story and just the vision behind Hope United and how it came to be. So my background is that I come from South Bend, Mishawaka area, and I had established a nonprofit that's very similar to Hope United there, and that was about 13 years ago. And then the Lord called us to Three Rivers about 7 years ago, and we started Hope United. So my story really begins with a time in my life where God interrupted my life, and from that interruption it really changed my life completely. And I'd like to just share that with you a little bit. I was in a Sunday school class, and we were talking about discipleship, and we were looking at a book called In the Dust of the Rabbi by Ray Vander Laan. And also, what's so amazing is I was also connected to my Jewish roots through that class, and so I have a passion for our Jewish roots as well, so I feel right at home here. But through that class, just God started to reveal some things to me that I really had never understood in my faith walk before, and that's what I want to share with you today. In the course of that class, we learned the Shema. Are you all familiar with the Shema? So it's a Jewish prayer that is still prayed to this day, daily. Jesus would have prayed this twice a day with his disciples. And it really consists of the verses that talk about loving God with all of our heart, mind, strength, and soul, and loving our neighbors as ourselves. And that was central to Jesus' ministry with his disciples. And so we talked a lot about that in this class on discipleship. And we touched on the point that, remember when Jesus was asked what the greatest commandment was, he said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul. And he said the second is equal, to love your neighbor as yourself. And he went on to say that all the law and the prophets are summarized in those two things. That struck me in a way that it had never struck me before. And I realized if I could wrap my mind around what Jesus had and what he meant by loving God and loving our neighbor, that's what discipleship is. So I began to look at that for myself, what that meant. Loving God, I understood that meant walking in obedience to his commandments and to his way of life. But the thing that God began to reveal to me was that it was also about full surrender. Surrendering my life totally to his will. Up until that point, I'd been a follower of Jesus for 27 years. And from the outside, I looked like I was a fully devoted follower, right? I had been to Bible school. I had earned a degree in biblical counseling, fully engaged in my church, doing worship team, Sunday school teaching, VBS director, all that stuff. But what I began to realize through this class and through understanding discipleship, that I hadn't really totally surrendered my life. I was still hanging on to my will and my desires for my life. I was still seeking after everything of the world. I still desired furthering my career and my business, making lots of money. Those were important to me. The bigger house, the bigger car, my children engaged in every sport. Those were things that were still of value to me, that God was showing me that is not his heart. And so he began to reveal that to me. And one passage that really became my life passage that I'd like to read to you is from Isaiah 61. Now this is a passage that Jesus would have quoted from Luke when he stood up in the temple for the very first time. And the reason this passage is so important is because for the first time, Jesus was declaring his mission. He was declaring what he had come to do on earth. And this is what it reads. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. That's become my life passage. Because if that's what Jesus was all about, that's what I want to be all about. Understanding this changed my life. It changed the direction and the course of how I lived my life. And it's really where Hope United sprang up. Loving my neighbor as myself was a little bit more fuzzy to me. I didn't quite understand what that meant exactly. Up until that point, like I said, I'd been really engaged in my church, and I would make meals for people when they were sick, and I would serve the best I knew how within the walls of my own church. But I had never known brokenness. I had never walked with people in brokenness and pain, and that had not been a part of my life. I began to search the scriptures, like what did that mean truly to love my neighbor as myself? And I think it was mentioned in the clip, over 2,000 scriptures reference meeting the needs of others. I'd missed it. I'd been a Christian for 27 years, and I missed how important to the heart of God that was. I was so convicted by that I began to work at a food pantry that very next week. I started serving at a food pantry. And what I saw wrecked me. It wrecked me. These people would come in, and I'd wait on them at this food pantry. Within a half hour, 45 minutes, I knew their whole life story. I'd be crying with them, I'd be praying with them, and then I sent them out the door. I still get shook up when I think about it. I sent them out that door with a little bag of groceries that did nothing to meet the real needs in their life. I missed that for so many years. I felt overwhelmed with what I saw because the needs were so huge. The brokenness was so great. And God began to give me a vision that this was going to take everyone coming together on the same page to help meet these needs. This is our responsibility. This is what Jesus came to do. It was his mission. It's our mission too. He's given us all the tools we need. We have the cure to help these people. And we can only do it if we come together because it's such a huge task. So that's really where Hope United was birthed, just from what God had taught me in my own life. But he wasn't quite done. You know, I had mentioned to you I had started a ministry there in Mishawaka, South Bend, but he still had things to teach me that I needed to understand before I was ready to lead this vision. So I went through my own life, my own brokenness in my own life. I'd been in the ministry for 2 years at that point when my whole life fell apart. We don't battle against flesh and blood, right? We battle against principalities. And so my husband, my ex-husband, divorced me after 29 years. We'd had a home building business at that point. We lost everything. My life fell apart completely. I went into depression, was suicidal. I actually had attempted to take my life a couple times during that time. You see, Satan didn't want this ministry to go forward, and he was going to do anything he could to keep it from going forward. So I went through a really rough time. During that time, though, I will tell you that I found out that God is truly enough, and he met all my needs during that time. He is truly, truly enough. So I went to, our home building business failed, and so I decided, we went through the divorce, I decided I was going to, be fully engaged in just serving with my life. I went to work at Hope Ministries in South Bend, which is a faith-based homeless shelter. And again, like God just began to teach me so many things I needed to understand. See, even at that point in my life, even after the things God had been revealing to me, there was something in me. Deep down, I didn't understand that I believed this, but I did. There was something in me that believed I was where I was in my life up until that point because of my good choices, because I was a good person. And that was a lie. And I began to understand that it was only God's grace, only His grace, that I would have been in the position that those folks were in. I would have been homeless. I would have been an addict. I would have been a murderer. Only His grace kept me from that. So when we understand that, when we truly grasp that truth, how can our response not be to help those who are going through the rough stuff in life? You can't help but respond when you truly understand that. So at that time, my husband and I moved here, like I said, 7 years ago, still struggling with lies of the enemy, thinking that God could not use me again after everything I'd been through, the brokenness. But God began to rekindle the passion He had given me. We approached Riverside Church where we were attending, and they got behind this vision of Hope United, and that's really how it all got started. So that's my story, and I'd like to share it with you a little bit about the vision behind Hope United and what we talked about in this clip. I will need the PowerPoint for this. I don't know. Here's our tech person.
We didn't get the PowerPoint on the flash.
Oh, we don't have a PowerPoint?
But if
Okay.
if you can find it, I can get it back there.
Okay.
Let me go to the flash drive.
Yeah, so Amy's testimony, too, she'd been through extreme brokenness in her life. She was a meth addict for 15 years. She was facing 30 years of incarceration at the time that God got a hold of her in her life and changed it completely. And today, Amy serves as program director for our Amanda's House, which is women's recovery home. Amazing giftedness that she has in reaching women and helping bring about transformation in their lives. There it is there.
What is this here?
Mm-hmm. So sorry. And I'll just start talking and we'll skip some of these PowerPoints. But Hope United is really meant to be the church's organization. Our goal is to bring the local agencies, missions, churches all together on the same page to help those in our community. But it's meant to be empowered by our churches. So one of the things that we have is a ministry board. And so on that ministry board are pastors, church leaders. And so we have a board of directors that kind of governs the legalities of Hope United. But it's really the ministry board, our churches, that drive the vision for Hope United. So that's really what we're all about. I had never really heard of anything like this before God began to give me a vision for it. At this time, we have about 14 to 16 partner churches that are saying they want to be part of everything that we're doing. I consider you folks a partner church for sure. All my notes are in here too, so. So I like to kind of talk about what our core beliefs are. We may not use this at all, this PowerPoint. But there's really 4 main core beliefs. And if you can understand the core beliefs, you can kind of understand more who we are and what we're all about. So I'd like to talk about that. First and foremost, that we believe that the church was meant to be one. So in John, Jesus prayed to the Father, and he prayed that all those who would come to believe in him would be one as he and the Father were one. So we were never meant to be all disconnected, right? We were meant to be one in our belief with Jesus and what he'd come to do and what he brought, salvation. So we're not always going to believe the same. We're not going to have the same doctrines. We're not going to worship the same. But we can serve together. We can love our God and our Lord the same, and we can serve the same. So again, that's what Hope United is all about. And the second core belief is that we've been mandated to love our neighbor as ourselves. I've already shared with you, how God had touched my own life with that truth. That is our mission statement, that we've came to reverse all the effects that sin, the negative effects that sin has had on the world. God has privileged us to be a part of that work. That we can bring freedom and healing, not only through his word, but through our actions of love. Are we on there? Nope, not yet. So that's another core belief of Hope United. The third is that at the very root of all the cycles, are we on? Okay. All right, thank you. We're going to skip to this one. Yes. So at the very root of the cycles of brokenness and dysfunction and addiction is pain. It is always about pain. And again, it's the effects that sin has had on the world that bring about the pain. There's really 2 types of pain. We all experience pain in our life from things like a death or loss of a job. We all go through that type of pain, but there's a secondary type of pain that changes our identity and belief in who we are. It's so deep-rooted that it destroys lives. At Hope United, and even in the work we do with Amanda's house, we focus on that pain. It's those pain issues that people need to be healed and set free from the lies of the enemy. And understanding that really changes how we approach those that are hurting, right? We have a tendency to look at people who are going through brokenness and say, what is wrong with you? And the response really should be, when we understand, we ask, what happened to you? What healing do you need in your life? What healing do you need for Jesus to bring you because of what you've been through? I don't think this is working. So true life transformation happens in the context of relationship, and that is our 4th core belief. First and foremost, a relationship with God and his Son, Jesus Christ. A relationship with others, and that happens through discipleship, and a relationship with all of creation. At the breakdown of why we don't see transformation happening is because those relationships don't exist. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the ministries of Hope United. The first is our mentor program. So we have trained 27 different mentors from 7 different churches just to walk alongside individuals in brokenness. We get referred, these people get referred to us through our social service agencies and through our churches. When people come to our churches' doors and they want handouts, guest cards, whatnot, we're asking our churches to refer them to us because we know that those needs that we're seeing on the surface are just the surface. That underneath those needs that they're presenting, there's much deeper needs and pain. And so our mentor program, we ask our mentors to meet with their mentees once a week, and they just develop friendships with those folks and help them come up with goals for their lives. And the ultimate goal is to connect them to a relationship with Jesus. Our goal is to raise up these mentor teams from all of our churches, because the church is the answer. It's not programs. It's really the church. That's what the church was meant to do, to be a place where people can come with all their hurts, habits, and hang-ups and find freedom and forgiveness and healing. So our goal is to direct individuals back to our churches. We also have what we call gap ministries. We don't want to duplicate any services that are already out there, but what we're asking is that our churches step up to the plate and form ministries to meet needs that aren't being met currently in our community. One of our first gap ministries is called Restored Hope Furniture Ministry. And it came out of a passion of one of the churches in Sturgis, Firm Foundation. They had a passion to do this, so they raised up a team to put this together, and Hope United helped them do that. But they just provide furniture for folks who are starting over. Our Amanda's House Recovery Home, the gals coming out of that after they graduate are recipients of that furniture. So when they move into a new place, they just provide them with all the essential things that they need for their home. These ministries could be anything. There's another church here in Sturgis that they're looking to do a car care ministry. And it's really just folks using their gifts and talents to come together to serve in our community. So it's mechanics that coming together from all different churches just to work on people's cars on Saturday mornings. Like I said, these ministries could be anything. There's such joy when we can just use the gifts and the talents that God has given us to serve people. It brings such joy because that's what He's created us to do, to serve. And our gap ministries are meant just to be the connection, right, between those who are hurting in our community and the church. Sometimes there's this huge separation. We want to help people, but we don't know how. And so our gap ministries are a way to connect us to those who are hurting. Then we developed, it's called Meet the Need, and it's a cloud-based networking system. Again, we're about bringing our churches and agencies together, so this is just one way to make that happen. Right now, you can go to Hope United's website, or you can go to our community service website, and Meet the Need is on there. How it works is local agencies, ministries post what needs they have, whether it be for goods, or for services, for volunteerism. And then you folks, our congregations, can go and find out what those needs are, and you can sign up right then and there to meet those needs. Let's say someone's having a blanket drive and they post on there, we need 12 blankets. You can go right on that site and sign up to provide a blanket, and then that's kept up in real time. Those 12 blankets would show as 11 blankets. So it's just a means, again, to reach you as our congregations with connecting you to what the needs are in the community. And then finally, we have Amanda's House. Amanda's House came out of the passion, Amy Kemp, who I spoke to you about from Riverside Church. At that time, she was the recovery pastor there. And she just had a passion. She saw these women that were coming out of jail and they had no place to go, and so they'd go back to their drug houses. The story of Amanda's House is one that it was a gal whose name was Amanda, and another gal from Riverside Church had been mentoring her, and I think it was her third time coming out of jail, and she had nowhere to go, and she went back to the only sources of housing she knew, and she overdosed and died. It was Tracy Cole who was her mentor, and that whole story is on our website if you're interested in reading about that, and I also have pamphlets in the back. But yeah, that's where the vision came from. Tracy had always told Amanda that someday there'd be a place where women could go to get the help that they needed. And so that's where Amanda's House was formed. We opened a year ago. February was our first, took in our first resident. We just had our first graduate in July. Wow, is it amazing to watch this kind of life transformation take place. I brought just a few pictures for you to see of the house itself. That was the other amazing thing that we saw. All these volunteers coming together to make Amanda's House happen. It was done almost entirely through donations and volunteerism. I don't know if we're seeing those. Yeah, there we go. And it's a beautiful home. It's a beautiful home. The goal was really that these women could come to Amanda's House and feel so loved by providing them with this beautiful place to stay. We do have Amanda's House Lunch and Learns. Like if you're interested in learning more about what we do there, that too is posted on our website, but we have some dates listed. It's just an hour during the lunch hour that you can come and just learn more about us. So we'd love to provide you with that opportunity to do that, and I can tell you more about that in the back. And I'd like at this time to just play a testimony of one of the gals who's been through Amanda's House, if I could.
In 2006, my life changed and it was shattered forever. It felt like it was forever. I found my mother dead. That started a cycle of insanity, despair, even despite what I felt even as a child, it intensified. It's just, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I didn't have a group of people that wanted to be with me. We come from a family of addiction and burdens and mental health issues, and I know my mom struggled with it, but I thought that we'd be together forever, so I would never have to fear anything. I can remember being the target of bullying all through school, even to high school. The only person that seemed to get me was my mother, and now I was to face this big, scary world by myself with no tools, or nothing to really lean. So October 1st, 2020, I got my second DUI. I was looking for ways to end my life. I was tired of being like this. And then when November hit, there was one more day I was really tempted to drink. And I don't know what changed that day, but I had my Bible in one hand, and I had a bottle of liquor in another hand. And I was debating, like, I don't want to do this. I never really wanted to do this. But there's like this struggle, like this good versus evil, like do it. And then the other side was like, no. And I went outside and I looked up and I said, God, I can't do this without you. It was the very first time alcohol has entered my hand and I did not drink. So I clung to my Bible and I threw the alcohol into the woods, and I have not looked back. And during that time I was trying to look for a program that would help me, because I've been through all these programs, but they were missing the one thing I truly needed, and it was Christ. I needed something that really would give me hope. And then I entered the Amanda's House November 12th of 2020, and my life has completely changed. I have gotten an opportunity to work on my foundation in Christ. My fear is slipping away. I have met such wonderful team and volunteers who donate their time to help me and the other lady that is in the house. They look at us with such compassion and love and no judgment. I have an amazing sponsor named Tracy, who is awesome, and through her, I've went through inner healing sessions, and she's helped me to open the doors of trauma that was too scary to look at. She's helping me reconnect with my daughter. I am not the same person that I walked through these doors. I have confidence and boldness. The love of Jesus fills my heart completely. Just like Jesus was resurrected from the grave, I have been resurrected and given new life and new hope. To those who are on the verge of wanting to give up on life, I tell you, don't give up. I am a living example of what God and love and compassion and mercy can do to a person. Pastor Paul and Bonnie Woodrow, like their heart is truly to serve not only the church but the community at large. Like they love everyone. They want everyone to be a part of this because it's huge. We truly are better together. I would not be here had it not been for all of them and all the people who stepped in to help. It's been absolutely amazing.
Powerful stuff. And that's what it's about. It's about lives changed, lives transformed through the power of Christ. I don't know of any other way. There is no other way. It is only through Christ that lives can be transformed like that. We get to see that happening every day. And I'm blown away. And it's not only the people that we're serving, you know, we see the ripple effects of how God is reaching other people. Just Sunday, my husband and I were sitting in the cafe at church, and we see Carissa. She was our first graduate. She comes walking in the door. She's on her own now. She's got an apartment. She's reunited with her daughter, just serving the Lord. So I see her walking in, and she's walking into service. And a few minutes later, I see her friend, and she's walking in the doors with her 3 children. And she was saved through Carissa's testimony. And then one of the gals that we have at the house even now, her name is Carrie. She shares her testimony too, so it's fine sharing her name. But here she is in church with her mom, who had never been in the church door for 40 years, and she's already bringing her mother, and she brought her aunt. Carrie didn't even know the Lord when she came to Amanda's house. We're seeing miracle after miracle after miracle. So even the ripple effects of not only the women that we're serving, but how God is touching more and more lives even through that. So again, thanks for bearing with me today. I'm not, the most gifted speaker, but I appreciate the chance to share my story and my heart and my vision for Hope United. I'd kind of like to end with a song, if I could, because I think this song really sums up what it's all about. So let's end with this song.